Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you so much for taking time off your busy schedules and being here in this very topical session on building data-driven business. Big data analytics is the buzzword these days in enterprises. With businesses generating humongous amounts of data, implementing an analytical solution is not a choice anymore for organizations. It has become a compulsion. If they want to make sense out of the data generated and turn into intelligence, actionable intelligence, it is simply critical for organizations to have a data analytics visualization platform. There are several real-world use cases wherein enterprises have leveraged big data analytics to achieve remarkable results. And just to name a few, American Airlines with its electronic reservations, Otis Elevator through its predictive maintenance, and American Hospital Supply by its online ordering have dramatically boosted their revenues and reputations. However, implementing a data visualization analytics solution is easier said than done. There are a slew of challenges confronting IT decision makers looking to maximize data analytics. To throw more light on the challenges and opportunities confronting CIOs with respect to data analytics visualization, ETCIO and Tableau have organized this very topical roundtable discussion. And to discuss these issues and more, we have an expert today. On my right is Mr. Prashant Momaya, Head Customer Consulting for Tableau. So without any more ado, let's get on with the discussion. Let me start with you, sir, Mr. Upkar Singh. I'm sure big data analytics comes across as a very differentiating solution for most organizations, for you as well. How are you leveraging it in your organization to drive value?
Myself Upkar from FIS Global. So being into financial domain, I think analysis of data is of prime requirement, not internally as well as giving solution to banking and the financial institution.
Sure.
So it makes sense, basically to make the product as well as services valuable for the business outcome.
Sure.
So this is, I think, analytics is very important for that.
Mr. Suresh from Krishna Maruti Group. Do you think it is impacting your top line or the bottom line in any way? And how are you leveraging the solution in the company?
Good evening, everybody. Definitely, it is affecting our the business because data is really very important these days, and what we are struggling towards is we have the legacy of around 15 years of data, and the data cleansing is one of the key area which I foresee that that is the first key thing which we have to just do. And once we are done with that cleansing of the data, the next part is the availability of the data to the decision maker at the right time.
Sure.
And the tools and all which is required to be provided, made available for making those data, that is very important. That's what we are trying to just leverage on.
Rohit sir,
Yeah.
where are you in this journey of a data-driven business? Where do you stand?
See, in our probably the gentlemen's my friends, they are basically the CIO, so probably their look will be different, but my probably look will be completely different because I'm from the security domain. You got my
Sure.
point. So there's always a conflict between the IT and the information security. But yes, definitely. There are a lot of things, there are a lot of challenges actually which we are facing from the information security angle. So we implement a lot of things. This is definitely the need of the hour. Most of the organization or probably all of the enterprises are going for these things or already gone, and there are organizations who are matured enough. But there are a lot of the information security issues which
Sure.
we are facing on the daily basis. Probably that could be one of the reason, maybe the capabilities issues. We are implementing, we are doing a lot of things, but the capabilities are not up to the mark, and due to that, the security issues are actually coming on day in and day off.
Sure.
So that is definitely a major challenge which, as a CISO, we are actually facing.
So you have to do the balancing act.
Yeah,
basically,
absolutely right. At times, it becomes actually very difficult. From the IT driven project, it is one of the fantastic thing. But from the security angle, because we are a highly regulated business by almost every regulator of India. So, and there are definitely other laws also. It is not only the regulator. We have to comply also those things. I would say it is actually becoming a very tough life for us most of the times. Most of the times.
So business wants information and you have to kind of control it. Basically,
Absolutely
those are the crown jewels
Absolutely right.
for you, your company.
Yeah.
Right, sure. So moving on, sir, you have the marketing role in the company, right?
Yeah.
So now we see, there's an overlap between the marketing function and the CIO function. How do you see, data driving businesses, especially for your position, your role?
So I think from a marketing perspective, it becomes more challenging for HCL as an organization, and for me, more specifically from a marketing organization perspective, we deal in client bases globally with a lot of data privacy setting in. GDPR everybody knows, but California Consumer Protection Act is now, which is again more stringent, and we perceive that this is going to only get more stringent. I think India also just signed some policy yesterday or today, I think so. So the availability and usage of data is going to become more and more stringent. We used to rely heavily on some vendors for a lot of databases, validating and authenticating, because the onus lies on us now, right? So how do we therefore ensure that the data that we are using is usable, so to speak, without any bugs in it, so to speak? There are sleeper databases and stuff. So how do we manage that? Is a bigger concern for us from a marketing perspective.
But how are you leveraging it, analytics, visualization within your company?
So
to
visualization analytics we use more from the domain that I represent, which is cybersecurity,
Right.
as Rohit mentioned. So we are into real-time threat intelligence and monitoring.
Mhm.
So that is where we use a lot of data, and we monitor multiple around 40-50 plus customers and their interactions from the net on a real-time basis that we are able to kind of figure out if there is a possible threat looming in their environment.
Sure. Right. Sir?
So good evening, everybody. I'm from an automobile background, working for the last 20 years into the automobile. It is a challenging thing for an automobile component manufacturer to really compete into the market, with all the competition being on a razor cut margins. So I think these analytic tools have really given us a power to, like the marketing guys, they used to always ask us, how is the trend going to happen into the festive days, whether which particular model of mine thing will sell off and which will not sell off. So we were sitting on a huge lake of data which was being generated over a period of 15-20 years into the ERPs we had.
Right.
But we were not able to give the reports the way actually the marketing guys were asking us on a fly of the click. So we were not able to do that. But with these analytic tools which have come into the market, we were able to really do justice with the data which we had. I think so. And they've given them the tool which really they were able to manage the show in a better way. And the profitability has really improved in the periods which we were talking about after implementing this particular software in our organizations. So other part was onto the manufacturing side. We were able to see which particular model is giving the profitability, because raw material cost keeps on changing into your domain very fast, because most of the parts are on your material part of it, and RM material cost keeps on increasing, but the customer doesn't give you a rise as per the material cost. So there we were able to do the analysis which particular model is doing better at that. So I think so it has really played a good role in our lives.
Absolutely, because as people say, data is the new oil, but analytics is a refinery.
That's right.
Great. So let's move on to this side now. Sir, it's from Fortis Healthcare.
I'm Ajay. I take care of the corporate communications and marketing and PR so from my perspective, like we have a target audience whom we have to target to get it into our system. So this data about the people, the people who want to opt for treatment is very important. How do we target from the media perspective, from the marketing perspective, whom do we target, how do we target, which is a potential patient or customer who can come into the system.
Right.
So I think that is total data driven, and also the information is very sensitive what we get on if we have information in our system, because from that Ajay is the CIO, he'll be able to address it better. From my perspective, I have to look at how cater to them, or how do we market, how do we get them into the fold.
Sure, because he must be enabling everything for you.
He's implementing,
Right.
so he'll be able to detail it much better.
Sure. So what has, all these solutions have, the kind of business impact that you're seeing in your organization after this?
Good evening. I'm Ajay. So, I think our journey, we are not very, especially in the digital data framework, we are around 5 to 6, 7 years old. So, we have graduated from a native application based database derived information to across applications getting that. But I think the stage that we are coming is where we're looking at the predictive things, not what has already happened and the trends toward that, but what is likely to happen.
Sure.
So I think no doubt, I don't think as an organization we really know what opportunities lies ahead because we haven't yet used that opportunity to look at it. But I would see, especially for healthcare, especially in the predictive in terms of if I am for a patient, if we have a health record for last 4 years and they are doing every year their preventive health checks, what are the likely possibility of a person, what he needs or what he's likely to have. I think there's a huge opportunity. We just started our journey. We have ventured into analytics part of it, which is more AI and ML led. But I think the opportunities are. I don't think as an organization we know what we can derive out of it going forward.
So you've just scraped the surface,
Yeah,
as they say.
just we are just right now starting. And information security, I said, I think personally my feeling is with a proper analytics tool, it's a better way of controlling the information than now where the data is so disparate and it's available in pieces. So my personal feel is I think more and more we move into a organized way of analytics. The security part can also be much taken care of in terms of from the data security perspective or loss prevention perspective. It's
Sure.
going to be helpful.
Sure, definitely.
Thanks.
Moving on to you, sir. Can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Rakesh Samkaria. I'm from the finance background, and hearing out what I like to say is data was always there, but the analytics was a challenge, or it was less effective, or not to that extent. So I think we have progressed a lot. Data dissection has helped, and in fact, that dissection I will call it like a GPS system. So it helps you in positioning where you are, where you were, and where you want to go. So that is a
Nicely said, sir. Sure.
that is there. And as far as the challenges are concerned, certainly security, as everybody has pointed out, is a major challenge. Whether it's financial data, non-financial data, or operational data, and we need to safeguard it. And high level of risk is involved into that. And there are constant threats. Like I'll give you example in terms like where we have online advertisement system on the say in the airport we are advertising, and the network is interlinked, and we get constant threats and constant efforts by numerous attacks.
Right.
But the strong security system is always
Sure.
helping them to negate them.
Right. Sure.
That's the
Ma'am?
Hi, I'm Anshu. I'm from the MIS, heading the MIS team in IFCO Tokyo General Insurance. And since it's an insurance sector, honestly, complete insurance sector is derived or running by analytics as of now. Which sector to cater to, where not to do business, which area not to do business. So not only from the like which business, which occupancy to cater, which area to cater, demography also. So see, insurance is like multiple segments. You have kind of fire insurance, you have kind of motor insurance, you have health insurance. So when you go to health, then you have to cater which age group to cater to. When you go to car insurance, which make model, which demography. Maybe the same model is profitable in a certain area and the same model is not profitable in another area. So to have more discounts in a particular state, having a lesser discount on the same model.
Sure.
So this is all done only through analytics.
Right.
So our company, I would say, is more of data driven as of now, and like we have been into analytics since 2012, progressing onto it. And till the part, if I say, of the descriptive, we are very much there. Dissection is very much there. And when we talk in terms of AI and predictives, we've just stepped into it.
Okay.
So we're just baby onto it. We've done small models, fraud models onto it for claim processing, and bit of robotics onto processing of the claims. wherein the manpower is not there, and the photographs are uploaded, and but that's the count is so small as of now that still needs to be built in. But this is the only thing in future. You don't have any other field to go away.
Can you also counter fraud? Because that is one area which is
This is under testing of POC. What do I should say? But yes,
Okay.
you can actually identify the propensity of the fraud from the past parameters. It is actually possible using
great.
AI. What we have seen while doing our past data, what we have seen, and then the prediction which generates on the data really helps. And there are also multiple the tools which are available now. They are like the one who is going to implement it should have the tool which gives you the insight also for the let's say we have surveyors in the field, and if I finally calculate and everything and say that it is a fraud, the likelihood of fraud, but likelihood of fraud on what parameters should be given to that person, because he will not do fraud, then what should he check?
Right.
Scoring on some parameters. So while implementing this should be taken care that the end user is a normal layman person, a surveyor. So in terms of that it is to be used. But analytics is the only future.
Very interesting. In fact, we've got a nice mix of companies, verticals. We've got BFSI, manufacturing, healthcare, as well as a mix of nice roles. We've got a marketing gentleman here. Sir, you are the CFO of. You used to handle finance.
Yes, I used to.
And now you head analytics for the company.
Yes, I head analytics, finance and analytics globally. So in terms, just to give you some background about Sapient, we're basically a technology company. We are leaders in digital business transformation for clients. If you look at the latest Forrester rankings, we're kind of way on top, on the topmost, rightmost quadrant in terms of digital business transformation for our clients. And we have a large AI and analytics practice also helping our clients. However, my role is to implement deals with an analytics internally. So how do you use our internal data for analytics? How do you analyze? Essentially, how do you improve profitability? All of that. So just to digress a little bit and talking about your fraud, in the year 2004, 2005, we had built a little bit of, in those days, AI and all that were not really well known, but we had built a software for the US national health, for the US health department to be able to detect fraud. So that was a long time ago, which we had done. Long time ago, you're right.
That time nobody used to understand what AI is.
Yes, that's right. Well, even the word, and we started our journey with analytics in the year 2000, when the word analytics had not been coined even. I think the word analytics was coined, there are various versions, but it was coined when the book Moneyball was written, right? This was about how analytics was used in order to win the baseball game, the Oakland Dodgers. And then of course Moneyball became a very good, became a film also, and then that's how it became. It's only when it became a film that it became very popular. Then I think Davenport and Harris wrote a book on competing with analytics. Competing on analytics. And Davenport and Harris's book was a kind of a seminal. It was like a bridge between what existed and what can exist. He showed all of us, what can happen. But much before that, we started a journey in the year 2000 when we built, and then again, at that point in time, BI tools were in its infancy. BI was not a word that was known, but such tools were in its infancy, so we built it ourselves. We had a data warehouse, and from our ERP, Oracle ERP, we would dump everything into the data warehouse, and then pull it and show it in Excel. That's how our journey started off at that time. And then sometime in the year 2005, 2006, when our company strength became when we got to about 3,000 employees, Excel 65,000 rows was a limitation, right? It's in that version of Excel, the million rows of Excel didn't exist at that time. So that became a limitation. So we started looking out for outside tools, and there were very, very few vendors at that point in time, and we chose Oracle OBIEE. So, and we still use OBIEE for our major analytics. So dump everything over there and use it for all our major work. enterprise wide, and we have about 1,500 people using OBIE on a daily basis every day. If you look at the number of hits in a month, it's unique hits, unique people, it's about 2,500, but on a daily basis, it's about 1,500 or so. And to the extent, Nitin, you are marketing, so you'll probably like this. And, example which I'll tell you. So, one example, which is, as a company, as a technology company, everything is a project. We sell services. So services, everything is a project. A client tells you, okay, make me this. This becomes project number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for a particular client. And every day, we produce a report which tells me between yesterday and day before, how did my pipeline change? And every change above a certain threshold, and for our threshold, for purposes of analysis, we've kept it 250,000 euros. So anything above that threshold is analyzed. So why did it change? So I get it on my computer, and of course I can see it on my mobile everywhere. So that's one use case that we use, but we use analytics for quite a few applications and cases.
Nice.
From that perspective.
Thank you, sir. Moving on, sir. Can you just, I can't see your placard actually from here. If you can just introduce yourself.
Okay, hi. So I'm Shubhajit from Indigo Airlines.
Okay.
And I had the strategic planning and analytics function.
Oh, great.
As far as we are concerned, in the last 1 year, we have been using analytics from a functional standpoint, and that's quite heavy analytics. Just to give you an example, on the operational areas, we are very high users of analytics in the resource planning domain, which pretty much sort of decides on the 22,000 headcount which we have. Cost is very important for us, naturally being an LCC. Also, we are heavy on analytics on the revenue management side. So that is where we are now, and the next phase for us is pretty much looking at cross-leveraging of data, for which the initiative that we have taken is to develop a corporate data lake, which is pretty much done.
Right.
And now is the time when we are focusing on fundamentally 3 things. One is the customer service pillar. The second is cost optimization, and third is performance management. So what we want to do now, we have a vision of developing a customer genome, so to say, which is sort of tracking the entire customer journey, right from the stage of reservations right up to the bag retrieval at the airports post arrival, and map it against each and every touch point of our employees or our team members, performance manage that, proactively provide data support to the front end staff to personalize the service points at a very, very low cost, leveraging the technology, and fundamentally provide a best-in-class experience for the customer, because unlike the full service carriers, we don't invest in terms of providing the service at a cost of a resource. So it's more towards tuning of efficiency, etc. So the customer genome is picking up quite well, and the whole idea is we should be able to visualize that very soon. So we do use visualization for the functional pieces, as I told you. But this integrated approach will sort of give us a much better view of a customer, as well as the touch points of the service. And aspirationally, where we want to reach is provide sort of artificial intelligence support to the front end roles, predominantly the check-in agents or the boarding gate agents, etc., to guide them into better managing a customer, or better managing a difficult customer, so to say. And eventually use things like augmented reality in supporting the front end staff. So yeah, that's where we are, and we are working hard on that. So hopefully we should be there in another year or so.
Great. It's really heartening to know that everybody is leveraging analytics in some way or the other. Maybe different points in this journey, but everybody is doing something with the technology. So moving on, what challenges do you face when you leverage this? Like the gentleman here said, security is a big challenge. Anybody who wants to share what challenges he faces when it comes to leveraging the solution?
So if I may continue with the challenge as well.
Sure.
So I think fundamentally the biggest challenge is that of mindset from a user standpoint. Fundamentally because in my previous life also I have been doing this, and I that was more with a cross cultural population. Here it's more towards a similar culture, but typically I guess what happens is that especially in operational roles there's a preset amount of tacit knowledge sitting in the heads of individuals, which is a real asset they don't want to sort of do away with. So somewhere at the bottom line there is a sense of insecurity, and the other fact is that how do you sell the real benefit of analytics unless you actually some sort of develop a product for the specific domain. So because typically I mean, if I were to interview 20 of my managers across India, all of them would understand BI or analytics as a glorified MIS system, which would give them typical bar charts, etc., which you could do pretty much in Excel, which they're very familiar with, and nobody wants to sort of do away with the Excel. So it's a question of comfort, it's a question of habit and practice. So just to share with the team, I think because we are working on a very exciting project on this. So what we have done is to trigger the adoption part of it, because for us we have more than 1,000 active users across. So what we have done is we have parallelly started a change management initiative, and we are using gamification as a concept. Whereby we are building in real life heroes and heroines, so to say, who in modes of a discussion talk about the entire journey of the migration from an Excel based MIS environment to using cutting edge analytics, and how what's in it for them, how does it make life easy for them. And I think that's working pretty well, because it's not about just hard selling the concept of using analytics just because that's the buzzword of today, but it's more about how it helps them. I think that's the fundamental messaging, and so rather than e-learning or the classical models of classroom based training, we find gamification to be a more acceptable and a more sort of more easy way to communicate the message. So I'm happy to hear more from the other members.
Yeah, sure. Anybody else? So security, mindset, any other challenges? Sure, sir.
The mindset is definitely, I personally met with the teams for the various reasons, but I think the mindset is one of the things. And the insecurity is also there, because you have everything basically in a platter now.
Exactly.
Previously it was not a platter, you got my point. So there were so many if, but, else, this and this. Now everything is in a very standard format, and it is in the very readable format and in a very jazzy platter, you got my point. So you can just click on something and you will get what exactly you want to see.
So is this a challenge, or
no, it is
makes
definitely
everything
not a challenge. I cannot say it is a challenge, but
Yeah.
it is actually probably the persons who are going to use in the data. For the management, it's one of the fantastic tool. Because
Absolutely.
they can just click
Click of a
see.
button and you get it.
But for the persons who are actually on the ground level, who want to basically feed, so probably there is some little bit insecurity that something is coming in our organization, and
It could make them redundant.
Yeah, it could make something.
Sure. Right.
Not from an HCL example, but to extend Rohit's argument, I think information dissymmetry earlier was a source of power, right? With analytics coming in and with visualization tools like what Tableau brings on table, everything is clear to everybody, right? So that edge kind of weans out, and everybody's on the same platform.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. So you wanted to say
I
something?
think the point that adoption is always a challenge, and change management efforts are required because people are used to a particular style of working, and now you want them to be different. But I think this is more of a matured organization that challenge comes in. For us, we are still far away from that. As an organization, we have grown through acquisitions. So as our organization is primarily through acquisition we have grown. So we have a different culture in different part, and the more important is the data definitions are very different.
Yeah.
So first to get to a common platform, the data definitions, so that we can have the analytics which is giving the right. That's one part. And within our healthcare, different part of India has different models. So you can't have a single solution which an analytics which can be seen across all the, because like just to give an example, we have a visiting doctor concept in Maharashtra, Bombay. Right? There's a full-time doctor which is available here. So the way they look at it, the information is very different than they look at it.
Yeah.
So we are trying to see how we have a different, we can't have a standard model. So right now what we were doing, the output was common for both. So that's where we found that we need to now look at little bit customizing it to the specific environment. But
Right.
data definition for us is still a challenge. That's what we're trying to get it.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. I'll just add to that.
Sure.
I think the guys sitting in those rooms are big guys, big companies, I should say. But we are an automobile company. For us, the basic challenge becomes is acquiring the software itself, because the cost of acquiring this software and then comparing. If you put it to the finance guys, they will say, "Oh, as Subhajit was saying, oh, you are just replacing my Excel. Why should I invest so much into it?"
Show me the ROI.
So give me the ROI. And justifying an ROI for a Tableau product or any other product I've talked about, you're not able to justify that thing. That okay, now you're not converting just an Excel into an analytics form. It has a lot of other things to do. The other problem becomes is that having the data scientist on board onto your own organization is a big challenge. Because the cost these guys are asking as of now, for us it is very difficult to really get that guy and then retain this guy over here. So that becomes the biggest challenge in adoption of this particular part, because the requirements keeps on changing. You can't really do the changes on the fly on this platform. Although we talk about that, okay, everything can be changed on the fly, but practically we have seen that it is not that easy also to change the queues for the analytics part of it. So I think so that is the biggest challenge which we see from that prospect.
I think skills will be another issue.
Sorry?
Skills on
skill
analytics,
gap.
right? Well, analytics is generally considered to be a domain of science.
Right.
But I think there's a lot of art in that which is involved, right? Because not everybody intuitively sees data the same way, right? So there are cheaper resources available who may claim to be data scientists. There are people who are very well proficient and see data in a very different format. That becomes a very difficult situation when you're hiring and presenting it to the customers as well.
Sure.
The other part I think so I'd just like to add is still we are not able to see the predictive things in most of the analytics tools which we are talking about. They're still giving on your past data. Analytics are possible. We are able to see that thing. But the moment we try to put it onto a predictive path, most of the people are just very susceptible about thing. No, we'll give you, this will not be in this form, it will become this way. So that clear path is still not visible with the tools available in the market as of now.
Oh, really? I'm sure there are companies that are doing this, but I'm sure Prashant here would be able to answer this better. So, anybody else, or should I shift to Prashant for his inputs on this? So lots of challenges, Prashant here. Sir, yeah, please go on.
So maybe I think I'd second that what Nitin said about skills.
Yeah.
So I mean, as Prashant would rightly know, he knows many people in my company who are very good at Tableau, but they're not good at all in business. They don't have that business sense.
Right.
So when you tell them to do something, they'll do it for you, but they cannot derive insights from it.
Yeah.
And that is a big challenge.
Yes,
Where
exactly,
people
yeah.
like us know business, but we don't know Tableau. We don't know those, or to that extent for which you can get insights. So
Yeah.
Right.
I think, I just want to add to this point. I think, what Joydeep and Nitin said is a very important aspect, because, typically, at least that's what I have seen in Indigo as well as in my previous organization. There is some amount of, well, I don't know whether it's healthy or unhealthy, but there is some sort of a competitive force which plays between a data savvy department or individual versus the need for developing an enterprise wide BI platform. Because typically what happens is the enterprise wide BI platform sits with IT who are predominantly driven by the technology side of things, and the functional side is driven by the business specialist who for purposes of their own requirement of efficiency, are heavily into analytics. So typically what happens is that you will have pockets of the business using in-depth analytics on one side, and you have the structural IT trying to do the same thing by doing it from an organization standpoint. And unfortunately, what happens is that the data platform which a corporate IT wants to build is a long-term activity, and so people are not patient enough. They need immediate results. The problem with the functional side is they get immediate results, but that's not a sustainable model because they are not cross-utilizing the analytics which they do, which other departments require. So I guess that is, and I have not really seen an inflection point where both these parties meet. So typically IT would always like to say that, it should be enterprise wide, and I'm sure there are reasons for that, obviously. But departments don't want to wait from a functional standpoint. They want to do their own analytics, upgrade from the Excel environment, etc. So I think that is a big challenge where, you have data silos present. You have a duplication of data, both from an entry standpoint as well as visualization. And there the biggest issue lies when you meet the CEO or the CXOs, you have multiple versions of truth, and to bring in that single source of truth, it becomes a challenge. So I think that perhaps needs a little bit of a focus, because that typically happens everywhere. So IT believes that it's more of a technology oriented activity, whereas the business believes it's more the derivative output of analytics and how it helps the business from a value addition perspective. So
would just like to add, sir.
Sure.
What you are saying is exactly true, and few things happens by chance.
Yeah.
For us, it happened like this. We are a team of technical and non-technical guys sitting in the MIS team.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
I am from a non-technical background.
Mhm.
I understand business. I've been into operations for a long time. Then I moved into analytics just because of the skill set I was having, which since I was handling group operations, so I built a few kind of skill sets.
Mhm.
I moved into analytics. I have a team of people who do the technical part. I support them on the technical as well as the bridging the gap between the users and the technical guys.
Yeah.
So I would say that it turned out somehow it turned to us very beneficial with the so now even when we do hiring now, so the kind of concept of hiring we have right now for this particular team is we hire statisticians also.
Mhm.
We hire graduates from mathematics stream also, and then we hire BTechs also.
Mhm.
So we are a mix of everything.
Yeah. Okay.
So that is how we are operating, and it becomes so easy to communicate with the department and not having silos in the company.
Okay. Yeah.
So it helps them to invest their time and actually see, when you have lots of information, it is a problem.
Yeah.
Right.
Lots of visualization. Oh, I'm having a count here also, I'm having a count here, what to use. I'm having list of dimensions here, now what to drop and what to use. So
Sure.
making them understand and making them actually understanding from a person who is from the operations background or from their own background is easier rather than a technical person telling him. Because for him, it was available in the system, this is how it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So bridging that gap is fantastic when you have a mix of the two in the same team.
Yes, but structurally, if your organization has grown up that way from an organic standpoint, then it's fine. You're lucky.
Somehow we are lucky. Yeah.
Exactly. But where you have a situation where you have different level of skill set, as Nitin was mentioning, in the functional domains, and you have that appetite to actually leverage analytics for results. I think that is where the trouble starts. Trouble as in from an enterprise standpoint, because then you start developing, high quality stuff at different touch points, but you can't cross leverage that. Taking your point as of the data definitions being very different, and the way you look at the same data being very different. So I think it's again a choice of standardization versus the localization and the benefit out of that.
Sure.
So.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, at least we face that. So I don't know about others.
That is what I told you.
Yeah.
We're just lucky to have
Exactly.
it structured like that.
So let's turn to Prashant for his inputs on this. Prashant, lots of challenges that everybody is facing. Security, mindset, defining data, cost,
and so I'll put out two numbers. So one is McKinsey and Company did a study, I think in 2017, 2018 kind of thing. They surveyed the 1,000 largest companies in the world, and they discovered that only, literally 8% of them said they have a successful analytics program. Right, and you're talking about 1,000 largest companies in the world. Everybody talks to McKinsey, basically, right? So McKinsey is friends with everybody. So, and I can pass on that study. It's a very interesting study. There's another one, and this was by IDC. This was done about 2016 around, which sort of said that about only 15% of business intelligence / analytics projects actually produce value for the customers. So obviously there are more challenges than there are, the opportunity is there, but to that. And I'll take this, and these are all absolutely valid things. I'll classify them into two buckets, right? There is the problems of scale, and there's the problems of complexity, right? So for example, stuff like security, stuff like mindset is open, but I would still put it under the problem of complexity, because, a mindset creates complexity, right? Scale is about you're working with more data, you're working with data that comes out of more systems, you're acquiring more companies, you're bringing more systems online all the time, you're not retiring your legacy systems. There is always, data is always in motion. So what we have seen, around our customer base, we have about 90,000 odd customers around the world. Some of the largest companies to like single person companies who use our software. And sort of three things come to mind as to the challenges organizations face. First one is, and some of it really came through in that discussion, including the skill set one, is asking the question, who can do analytics in your organization, right? Which harkens back to the question, what is analytics? And I just on a philosophical basis, I'll define it as the ability to answer questions with data. It is not about running machine learning. It is not about statistics. It's not about BI. It is the ability to answer questions with data. Who are the people who have questions? They are not people in IT generally, unless they are, cybersecurity and stuff like that, who are, watching out for your websites and things like that. It is people who are running the supply chain. It's people who are running marketing and stuff like that. Are they getting reports, or are they actually doing analytics? Right? And there's a gap there. And the gap is very deep, because most organizations exist on a producer-consumer model, right? There is a team of people who produces, and there's a team of people who consumes, and everything else they do is Excel, right? Because literally they have to say, give me the data and I will. It is like going to a restaurant and telling the chef that, no, you give me, I'll go cook, right? Kind of thing. That is the situation we face. The second thing which is out there is, after who can do analysis, is the skill set question. In order to do analysis, every organization requires a certain amount of data literacy, right? So for example, are the data questions asked in your boardroom? If your boardroom doesn't care about the data questions, it doesn't trickle down, right? So somebody up there has to say, okay, show it to me on a data, put a chart up there so that I understand the trend, put a box plot up there so I understand variation. Then we will talk about, that campaign you want to run, right? If that doesn't happen, that skill sets don't spread. Now, ma'am was really lucky saying that, we have this right combination of people, but most organizations don't have that in there, right? The right mix of business skills, technical skills, mathematical skills that need to be put together. And finally, even if you have that, how do you keep it going, right? You may recruit one person. Data scientists are heavily in demand today, right? And people shift jobs very quickly. How do you retain them? How do you build a community inside? How do you keep them engaged? How do you support them? And things like that, which is the third challenge. So the challenge of, who can do analytics, what skills you need to do analytics, and then how do you support that, right? And on scale and complexity. Is generally what we are seeing. And I'll give you an example. And the example is actually from the automotive domain. I am I worked for the world's largest diesel engine manufacturer for 10 years. So I'm not from the IT background as well, right? I'm an analyst, a supply chain analyst and a warranty analyst. That's where I cut my teeth, and an engineer. So what you had was, and this is, I can stay, so it's a automotive technology company, Honeywell. right? Honeywell makes technology for everything, right? One of the largest sort of companies in the world, dabbles in everything. They have, what they had is, again, a company that has grown by acquisitions, right? They have acquired 140 companies in the last 20 years, right? And they have like 60 different ERPs, every different language in the world, so on and so forth. One of the things that they did was they went through this entire painful process initially of how do you scale a deployment, right? How do you move from an MIS reporting kind of a thing to make it effective to who can do analytics? They actually went through that. They said, okay, these are the people within an organization that need to do analytics. If these are the people who need to do analytics, what skills do they need in order to do analytics? With the skills, what sort of tools and support processes should we give to them overall? And then, they literally went from everybody doing analytics in Excel to everybody doing analytics in a proper BI platform, which is Tableau, Alteryx, and a few more platforms, to about 30,000 people within 18 months. Right, so they were able to sort of do that, and there's some interesting challenges. Again, right, these stories are available. I can share them more if anybody is interested. But those are the challenges that crop up, right? Scale and complexity. It pays to think in terms of scale and complexity.
So moving on, gentlemen, how tough is it to drive a data-driven culture in an organization? I think the success or the failure of any project depends on the culture that supports it within the enterprise. So we've talked about challenges when it comes to leveraging the platform, but even before that, you need to have that culture, of data-driven business in the company.
Yeah, again,
Please come on, sir. No problem.
Yeah, same, as he was mentioning, that it starts from the top, right? In our company, again, is a company which have acquired number of companies in financial domain. So what we have observed, that if the top line is really serious about this, and what I have observed in my leadership, that they are very focused on two things. One is data analytics, and the second is security nowadays. So whatever they do it themselves as well in the boardroom, right? Even every, the leadership above a certain level is mandatory to have a digital assistance, right? So they need to leverage that assistant in multiple ways and present that in their board meetings, right? So what they have used, how they have used. So their dashboards are like anything, customizable as per their purpose. And the foremost thing what I have observed is that it has to have a strategy within an organization for data analytics as well, right? So then when we have that in place, it leads to many of the problems get solved, like the data classification you were mentioning, right? Then only you get to know what data is really important, right? You can filter down the legs accordingly, then what data really means for the business value. So I think that is one. The data strategy has to be in place. So everything, might then go on fall in place.
It has to be a top-down approach, like you said. It has to come from the board,
Absolutely.
and then percolate down. Anybody? Can we have the two gentlemen who have just joined? Can you just introduce yourself, sir?
Yeah, I'm Sanjay Gharde and working for JK Paper.
JK Paper, great. Sir.
Yeah, hi, this is Achan Sharma. I work for GPI and I'm heading the applications plus the BI.
Okay, great. So can we hear your thoughts on this, sir?
So I think
how tough is it for
the fundamental question is a lot of it depends on where does this analytics and the BI function sit. Right. So I've seen one of the most, I would say, successful setups where people are able to leverage the analytics. Plus there are places where they have not been so successful in doing this. Primarily, while it's right, Upkar has rightly mentioned, it should be driven from the top. But I think it needs to be, instead of having a 3-year roadmap, because, a lot of people don't understand, what is it that I'm going to achieve out of this. And they tend to put the technology first. So before that, if you can, pluck some low-hanging fruits by identifying some areas where this data pieces can add value. Like in our case, what we did, that there's a lot of, I would say, retailer data that gets fed it into my system. We have a data lake, which is running on Cloudera. I mean, not to mention the technology specifically, but so we decided to sort of, take some retailer data and then, created an algo on top of that.
Right.
And then which is now feed it back into the system in terms of the people who are actually selling it to the teleseller. So we are able to do basis on the last 3 months average and so on. So I think instead of putting the technology piece first, we should look at the business use cases more to speak. Pick a few use cases that can be, sort of achieved through or the productivity can be improved through these algorithms and the tools. So.
Sure.
So true. I just would like to add something to it. That as a service organization, we do provide such services to institutions as well. What we have observed that many of the organizations are just looking for new terms like AI directly, though they may not be requiring for the particular business case. So even simple BI does resolve their issues, right? So people or the organizations just want to jump into the AI and asking for the AI solution de do hamare ko. ठीक है. So what we have observed that the simple the BI tools are there which can resolve their business requirements. So it has to start in the data analytics path from the BI. Then you can leverage better by filtering the data lake and more outcomes for the business. Very true.
But it is said that data-driven culture can not be purchased or manufactured. It has to be nurtured and developed. So, what are your thoughts on this, sir? How are you driving culture?
Slightly. Hello. Yeah, my thoughts are slightly different. As Prashant has said, or the Mrs. Singh has said that it should be the top-driven. Yeah. But I'm more the convinced with the what Achin has said. We need to actually, until unless my experience is all the 28, 29 years in Indian the conglomerate, and these people are basically the large the Indian the houses, but they don't still the second generation is working, so they don't understand this. They, as you said, that it should be driven from the board. I disagree, because they need whatever they want to see on the board. So everyone, including the CFO or CEO, has to do whatever, but they need to see those informations or those charts. Probably you can make it in minutes, but those have been delivered on the board meetings. It's not happening that the charts or the whatever the way we want to do the analytics, that's not happening in the board meeting. It is happening. So I'm the part of the some of the board meeting where the IT has been taken a discussion. So everything has been discussed, probably which this data-driven organization will have. So I'm slightly different on that. People wants that to be there, and the board wants that. So to actually inculcate that kind of culture into the organization, as Achin has said, that we need to actually, as a CIO role, if ask me, I need to actually show them the use cases and say that, okay, fine, see, this has happened and this has saved lots of time of the organization. And therefore we need to do it bigger this thing, and then the people will be able to invest on the technology first before seeing the result. Because you implement any solution and say that tomorrow result will come, I don't think that it will happen. So it will happen down the line 2 years, 3 years, because until unless it is a matured solution, you will not be able to see that. So that's my thought on this.
Sure, but I feel the expectations of the management is also changing from the CIOs. They also expect the CIO to open up new revenue streams, and which I feel through visualization, analytics, that can be achieved. So that is my thought. I mean,
no, that I agree, because their thought is changing. They want everything to be given to them. The management, if I talk at the CEO and above,
right,
they will not understand that how this information has been delivered to them. Okay, so they are not looking the underlying effort which has been put into give that data.
Right.
If they says that tomorrow is a board meeting and I need to see, for example, that my revenue for 5 years, and it should be say waterfall chart to be made, and if it has been told at 10 o'clock in the night, whatever has to be done, CFO will present that waterfall chart. if he is not even his team doesn't understand, but that will be shown in the morning 10 o'clock the board meeting. So what my point is, if people are putting that kind of effort and having the technology driven or data driven company, probably that can be done on the click of a buttons, but they don't understand. They will say this is required and I need to see that. I've seen this somewhere else. So those kind of this information has to be
just to add, I think for the last 15 years, most of the board management was relying on the data. Now, the whole data that was being prepared, as I think earlier he said, has multiple truths. So, if somebody in the marketing is presenting, he will show a different number than what sales is presenting or some finance is presenting. But I think where we are moving is management teams, what I see now, don't want to wait for somebody to present. They want to have the view of it all the time.
Right.
They want to have a proactive view of it. They are not looking for that I should know when a particular meeting is there. So I think that's where the business BI is going to help, because it is, like somebody said earlier, it is now transparent to everyone. It is not that I have to wait for someone to present to see what's happening in the organization. I should be able to view it at my own convenience, and like we have infolets now, I just open my PC, I can see all my KPIs on a real time basis.
Right.
I don't need to wait for that.
Yeah.
I think we are moving from doing some sort of periodic data feeding to the management to a real time data available to that is what I think the management.
This is also lead to,
and that's what the cultural change is.
Please, yeah.
And that can only be brought by the top people if they are themselves doing that.
No, so if the management team is looking at the data, you have to prepare to answer, because he can ask the question. He don't have to wait. He will look at the data and say why.
Yeah,
and if
absolutely.
you are not prepared at that point of time, then they know that what exactly you are on.
so you need to move from being reactive to proactive.
Yes.
That's the shift.
Different point of view. I think BI has been there for almost 2 decades now. I remember I had implemented Cognos some 16 years back before it got acquired by IBM. So I think BI has been there now since the topic is data-driven business. So there are a lot of organizations, and I have been a part of a couple of those organizations who are still struggling at that level, to get those management dashboards, as he mentioned, at the click of a button in more of a self-service kind of a mode. I think the data-driven is the next level, or I would say the ultimate level of this nirvana.
Right.
Because you have the data, you have the dashboards. Now, how do you sort of, leverage that to help the business grow?
Right.
So somewhere that cycle needs to be completed.
Yeah.
So you have got the data lake, you have these visualization tools available, Tableaus, and these Power BIs of the world. But then what should I do with that data? So that is where I think, and the struggle is, that most of it is actually custom. It depends on the organization and I would say, the data analysts that you have, who will sort of create these, and that's why there's a lot of demand of these R Python programmers and all. So that is where I think, if some sort of standardization can be made available, because, those data identification and all, and with all due respect, I think, while some, as I mentioned, some organizations are still grappling with that, but there are a lot of organizations who are far ahead in terms of this data-driven journey. So I think that is where we need some standard tool, and at least I'm not aware of any such tool which can provide you that kind of insight, which can directly help grow the business or improve your productivity.
Yeah, sure. I think another emerging trend, at least what we see, is based on that the fact is we already have a lot of information overload today, especially at the board level, where they are sort of privy to a massive amount of data and information, even if that's within a dashboard. So I think the appetite there is based on management by exceptions, where they're really looking at that what is the exception which needs my attention, and that is predominantly role based. So while the CEO has a level of exception, obviously the functional head will have a different level of exception to be looked at. But typically what happens is the tendency is more to have a comprehensive information play or a dashboard. But sometimes I see, especially at the board level, people lose interest predominantly because it's too, every dashboard is too crowded. So somewhere people lose the sense of simplicity or the real requirement, because the CEO need not look at the entire stuff, and howsoever we may try to concise it, I guess there are few parameters in his or her mind which they always look for. So I think if that piece is looked into, because what happens typically is either the EA or somebody would actually sort of do that for him or her and then present it. Now, is that the right way, or do we adopt a smarter way? I think the next gen BI may want to look into this piece, that threshold based exceptions. And that will make it more appealing to the key decision makers of organizations.
Sure.
Yeah.
So Prashant, when you interact with CIOs, so do you offer a strategy? Do you have a template for them to develop a data-driven business to transform into a data-driven company? How do you enable that?
So we actually have something, and we call it a blueprint, right? Which covers there are basically, and I think we spoke about all of them here today. So one is strategy, right? Do you have a strategy to exploit data? Right? That is fundamental, because everything rolls off the strategy. If you don't have a strategy in place to exploit data, then everything else is a point-in-time project, which will have an end. And basically, exploiting data is an infinite project. There's no end to the whole scope of work. And then there are sort of three streams of work, and one of them is called agility in deployment. So, for example, are you using the right tools, right platforms? Because literally, there is no one platform that covers everything that you do. Right, there is R and Python and Java programs on one side, to platforms like Tableau and SAS on the other side of the spectrum, and there is a lot of work to be done across this platform. The time of the monoliths is gone. Right, today it's all best of breed, small agile solutions that work for you. Are you deploying the right platforms in an agile manner, and are you amenable to change? Because the market itself is moving so quickly, applications are moving so quickly. The second thing is, what is your plan to grow analytical competency within the organization? Which goes back to my earlier thing is, who can ask questions? Do they have the right skills to ask questions? If you have, if you're an organization of 10,000 people and you have only 5 people in the organization who can work with data, right? You're never going to get to scale to exploit data. Even if you have AI machine learning tools, there is too many false positives coming out of them for you to skim through all of those. There's a lot of manual labor involved in those technologies that people sometimes don't seem to appreciate as much. And finally is, are you going to create some sort of either an org structure or with support? So for example, there were allusions to this earlier. Where is analytics based, right? Is it within individual functions? Is there a central team? Is it a combination of the two? Do you have an org structure to support it? And one of the things we are seeing is increasingly analytics is getting decentralized, right? IT wants to manage data, manage systems, manage applications, load up the data lake, provide the data platforms. And they say, hey, because we can't scale our people the same way, you have the ability, you go out there. There's other two trends that we are seeing in the industry. So number one is, and again, we discussed it in brief, but I'll just put it in context, is where is analytics consumable? Today, what happens is, analytics is on a PowerPoint, analytics is an Excel sheet, analytics is on a web page, analytics is on a mobile, so on and so forth. One of the things that is happening is, at least for the consumers of analytics, analytics should go in the flow. So for example, if I am an insurance agent who is trying to decide the discount or a premium, it shouldn't be an alt tab to another screen to actually see whether I can give this customer a discount. It should be right there when I'm filling that form up, that, well, this is the discounting trend, this is the kind of customer, here's the classification, here it is. Or if I am in manufacturing, if I'm putting in safety stock on a certain component, I shouldn't have to go to another report. It should just tell me right there that, oh, you're setting safety stock, this safety stock should be between these levels, this is the historical trend, so on and so forth. So that is one, and in that is things like voice, right? The ability to, hey Alexa, tell me what my sales are, right? Things like that. That is the second part. So where analytics is, the second trend we are seeing is, and absolutely on the analytics overload, is you will increasingly see this term being called out, called the citizen data scientist, right? Where literally you give a bunch of tools to everybody in the organization and see what kind of innovation they can produce. Now this goes contrary to the security, right? So you're saying that we will expose everything to a bunch of people. There are companies that run hackathons with data now.
Is this something akin to shadow IT?
No, this is not shadow. They actually, IT does it.
Okay.
IT themselves
They don't bypass
says,
the department.
yeah, they're saying we will run a hackathon, right? Today we run hackathons to do apps and stuff like that. Saying that, so we have a couple of large telecom providers in India as customers, and they literally call people from all departments. In fact, one of the winners of the hackathon for the data set on networking was a person from HR, right? Because they had a better idea and they were able to do it. So getting that variety and aspects in, because if you are working in supply chain all your life, you can only think in a certain way sometimes, right? We are restricted by our experiences. Somebody from a cross-functional thing can sometimes come and apply their ideas. So we see that it, of course, there is the security conflict in there, but if you create a trusted and governed environment, you are able to leverage skills from a far broader thing. So that is the second sort of emerging trend that we are seeing in the market. Absolutely.
So gentlemen, we've had a great discussion for more than an hour. So, I guess it's everybody's waiting for dinner and cocktails. So, just to wrap up the session, one final question before we join for drinks and dinner. What are some of the best practices that need to be kept in mind to enable or transform into a data-driven enterprise? So you've been, a pioneer. You've done this lots of years back. So if you would like to share some best practices that you adopted.
I think, as Prashant has rightly said, it's actually imperative to have some sort of a roadmap. Though, again, we all of us mention it, in numerous discussions, but, you can't stick to one roadmap and then, let it serve you for 3 years or 2-3 years, But there should be some reference document that one should have in mind. And then, as Mr. Sanjay rightly said, especially in the, with all due respect to the, promoter-driven organizations, gone are the days when IT can just go and ask for 2 crore rupees for, analytics project, and then it'll get sanctioned like anything. So I think that is where these, these small initiatives, needs to be carved out. And I'll just go back to what I mentioned initially. Collaborating it with business. You need to have some buyers, internal buyers, who can then sort of, get excited with your idea and so on. Sure. To me, I think, there are 3 pillars in any, I would say, such initiative. People, process, and technology. So technology, despite being a technology guy, I would put technology at the last, because, if you talk too much about technology and then, without, I would say, socializing or aligning it with the business strategy, I don't think that it will work. Sure. So I think you identify the right set of people, have some members from the business team and so on. And then, the processes around that could be use cases. These are the 2-3 things that I'm going to impact in the overall business scheme of things, and then pick the right tools and technologies to sort of leverage that.
Joydeep sir, would you want to share your experience? Your basically the best practices that come to your mind when one wants to transform his enterprise into a data-driven one? Some that you've adopted in your organization?
I would say we've been a data-driven company ever since we were born.
Okay.
Because we try getting other companies to be data-driven. That's the business we are in.
Right.
And it started off with our founders. We were founded in a garage in 1992. So we've had very little of those problems, frankly speaking.
Okay, sure. Cool. What's your
Yeah,
take?
as I said, strategy has to be in place, earlier also. So what we have seen that, if this is being used, this is analytics is required for each and every function. That is what it is required. It does helps to take decision. But moreover, if it is being started by the decision makers than the operational functions, it becomes easier because they can really leverage the data because they know what kind of decisions they require to make. So later on, we have seen that after decision maker being using these analytic tools, we have seen down the line project managers have started using that. We have taken agile methodology couple of years back from waterfall, and we have seen that our scrum masters, project managers have started using these BI tools for leveraging the quick and turnaround for their deliveries, and it is really helping us.
I think the other aspect of this, at least what we see, is more requirement of a standardization in terms of how we define a particular data. Because as I was mentioning about the single source of truth, because typically we are moving from let's say an 80-20 experience versus data-driven decision making to just the opposite. So a lot of critical decisions are being made based on analytics and the related outcomes. And time to time we see that definitions could vary between how we define revenue, how we define sales, is it gross or net, etc. I know it's sounds simple, but obviously when you go at a line level, I think sometimes there's lack of clarity on that, and a lot of decisions are taken without an understanding, because the more and more we aggregate data at some level, it loses the granularity and the understanding of that which is required to take critical decisions. So I think that piece of standardization and a single source of truth is something which maybe a stronger governance around the definition would help. So yeah.
Yes, if I can add to that single source of truth, so as I said, and I completely agree with what Upkar said about it has to be driven from the top. So whenever something is being presented, it has to start from the top. Okay, you're saying this, show it to me in that single source of truth, show it to me in that place. Sure. And once it starts from there, everything follows downwards. Right. If it doesn't start over there, then you can't really do anything much.
So, Prashant, some 2 or 3 best practices, and then your final comments before we wrap up the session.
Absolutely, and when you're speaking about the truth and stuff like that, the world we live in today, data is objective, truth is subjective, right? That is what it is. The data is the data, and then you build the philosophy of truth over the top of that. So that's the world we live in. But so I had 3, and I think again, right, this was touched upon. So, and I'm going to be very sort of little bit prescriptive about the way we do projects more than anything else. Is projects that an analytics project has to clearly answer some questions, right? So you need to document saying that, okay, I'm going to answer these questions, these business questions via data, right? That has to be clearly known. If you kick off a project that is an MIS dashboard or something like that, there is not definite clarity around stuff. If you are clearly saying that I want to answer questions regarding customer retention in here, and these are the 4 questions, you have very, very good scope on that analytics project. The second thing that lets you do is analytics projects need to be quick, right? You cannot have a 6-month analytics project. It has to be a 3-week project, 4-week project, because questions today come with a expire date, right? After the question has no point in the velocity of business today. So pointed questions, short project timelines, and the moment you finish the project, document the value, because selling internally the value of analytics is very difficult if you make a very large investment. Now, most of, and this goes back to our buying behavior on software. We are used to buying big monolithic software projects or software stacks, right? And that is sometimes not very amenable in analytics. You cannot buy big upfront. You got to produce value along the way, because you can do that with analytics. You cannot do that with an invoicing system, right? So you have to. These are the three I have, and there are others, but I think these are very prescriptive in nature. If you are able to do this, we've seen companies actually succeed with this, because you're running 2 projects now, and then suddenly people realize value. Suddenly over a time you have 50, 60 projects running, and you start scaling that. Absolutely. So those are 3 I want to just add in.
Great, Prashant. Thank you very much, gentlemen. It was, one of the better sessions that I have moderated. Amazing inputs from all of you. With this, we would like to wrap up this session. Prashant and his team would be around, and you can engage with them more informally over drinks and dinner. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.